Okay, so we have Jon Wedger, episode 3. Thanks very much, John, for coming on. You're very welcome.
My pleasure, Luke. My pleasure.
So, just for anyone who doesn't know, John's an ex-cop. He was a cop for a long time. He left the cops for reasons that we will touch on going down the line. But, John, if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself, your background. Um, so, how long you were a cop for, what age you were when you joined, and kind of the different roles that you occupied while you were in the police.
Yeah, I retired in 2017 with a pensionable service of 20, I think 27 and a half years pensionable service. I did just under 25 years, and I got early retirement by a couple of years. I joined in my early 20s, and I joined the Metropolitan Police, and I went on to become a detective. And I'm sort of, it depends where you are. I mean, society's in stratas. So I was very popular in the UK for my role as a whistleblower, in which I stood up and spoke out about the government, police and the government's deliberate cover-up of child prostitution. And I endured a horrific campaign to silence me, and it was sanctioned at least the senior levels of the police, but I believe it went a lot higher than that. So I've become very well known in the UK. That then spread out to America, and it's sort of gone all around the world. So I get messages from everywhere, really. Usually the ex-colonial countries, get a lot from Australia, New Zealand. And I speak up really for survivors of abuse and satanic ritual abuse, hoping that they gain justice for the cover-ups that have occurred. But I never expected things to go the way they went. I never really had any plans on investigating crimes against children. It's just really, it's how God took me, and that was it. But my career began in the early 90s. I applied to join the police to become a diver. I had a passion for scuba diving. I just loved being in the water, and used to sort of travel all over the place. Used to go to Ireland a lot. Used to go to Kerry, County Kerry a lot, because the diving there is absolutely superb. And I'm not a confrontational person, but at the time, football violence in the United Kingdom was at its height, and there was always ongoing running battles between the police and football hooligans. And the TV on the Saturday, the sports programs were dominated with live footage of the police just getting a kicking, really, off of crazy football hooligans. And I thought, why would anyone do that job? It's just horrible. So I didn't want that, but I used to love detective programs. I loved it. I loved watching the Sweeney. I liked the film Serpico about New York detective. And there's quite a few of these sort of detective things. And I just really liked it. It was just my thing. So that side of it did appeal to me. How you went about that,
It's funny you mentioned Serpico, because I always think of you as like the English Serpico.
Well, I actually
You're like the English Serpico, you know?
in 2015 I actually met him. I
Oh,
met
wow.
Frank Serpico. He contacted me, and he invited me to Amsterdam to share a stage with him. And never meet your heroes, as they say. And I was so looking forward to it. And when I met him, he was a real letdown. He wasn't the man I thought. But that's
Shit.
me. That's with my idolatry of the film with Al Pacino, which was a blockbuster, and it's like quite an iconic film throughout the 70s and the 80s. So, but yeah, it's been mentioned a few times. I've just written a book, and we're trying to push it to the publishers as the English Serpico. So I thought, no, that's not my life doing that. And so I applied initially to join the fire service because I wanted to do something with my life. I lived in London, and then moved to the outskirts of London, and then I moved back to live with my dad. My parents were sort of estranged from each other, really. My dad was a black taxi driver in London, My mum just was a housewife. She worked in pubs, if anything, for money. I had a working class upbringing, and I loved it. I had a great childhood, a fantastic childhood, great friends. I left school. I trained initially as an architect, and I left that, and then I trained as a bricklayer, and I just couldn't stick that. That was just. It wasn't so much the work; it was the people. They were just talking about football and shagging, and that was it. And it drove me nuts. So I didn't. I did a fair bit of time as a trainee bricklayer, stroke labourer, and then I moved on to work for the British Telecom, the telecoms company, and became a telephone engineer, working up the phone poles and stuff like that. And I loved it. It was great. And I used to, in my lunch break, I used to be able to go swimming because we had so much time on our hands. And the lads were always bunking off, going drinking, and I was more into my fitness, so I used to go swimming, and that was my passion, swimming. So I wanted a job where I could still go swimming. So I thought, well, I'll become a commercial diver. But the price of the course was so expensive, and I'd have to leave a job and not have a job, and I was too frightened to do that, really. I've never been out of work, and I've never, at that point, been really skint, so I just always wanted an income. So, and then I found out, so I applied to join the fire service, and they accepted me, and I passed everything. So I had a time start date for that. I put in for redundancy payment at my work, and I qualified for it. So I was going to get paid to leave, and then I'd get a job in the fire service. But my sister was a fingerprint expert for the police, and she said, look, she was a civilian, but she said, look, there's sorry, got a bit of dust on my nose. She said that there's jobs going in the Metropolitan Police because they've suspended all their dive team, their underwater search team, because they all got arrested for corruption. So get a form. If you do 2 years as a copper, you can put into specialise. I thought it was simple. I thought, brilliant. I can be a diver and they'll pay me and I get a pension and that's my life. That's it. Wow. I had a real simplistic view of things. So I put in for the police, and the applications between the fire brigade and police were running parallel. And my company said, right, where I worked, you'll get your redundancy, but you need to leave at the end of March. The fire service wanted me to start my basic training at the beginning of February. So I couldn't, if I left, I wouldn't get the money. So the fire service job I had to sort of bin. And then the police said, look, we'd like you to start at the beginning of April. So that just worked. So I thought, well, I'll go with what works. I thought I'd picked the wrong choice. I went off to the police training centre. It's the largest police academy in the world. It was a fantastic place. It was amazing. It's a mile perimeter, this secure, fenced off, all singing, all dancing training academy. The best in the world by far in North London. And it was quite strict. The regime was very military back then. A lot of the coppers were ex-army blokes. The instructors were, we actually did have guys from the army, from the Guards Regiment would come in and do the marching, the drill. We had to do all that to an army standard. And we had PTI instructors that come out of the army. So there was that vibe going. And I hated all that discipline stuff. It just wasn't for me. And then it was just a very strict regime, and it wasn't easy, but it was achievable. Let's just say that. Anyway, it was 5 months long, residential, and it's really weird how you get indoctrinated and how basic training of any sort changes you. And I started out resisting it, thinking I can't be like these people because I'm such an individual. I'm a loner. I hate being told what to do. I like working hard, but I'd only work for someone if I respect them. And the instructors at this place were such wankers. I couldn't respect them. Yeah. So it was just difficult for me to be. The army guys loved it. It was one force to another. It was one discipline organisation to another. They just sort of went into it, but I didn't. It was like a brick wall for me.
Yeah.
So I found it in that respect very, very tough going. But the recruits weren't allowed to swim in the swimming pool during the week. But I went in my lunch break once because I never used to have a lunch. I still don't. I never have a lunch break. I've never had a lunch break in my life. One of the things I just don't believe in it. And I always just go swimming. So I thought I'll go in their swimming pool. I've got an hour and a half. I'll go for a swim. And one of the instructors, who was a lifeguard, he said to me, "Look, recruits aren't allowed." But I was so fast, and I was achieving mile swims in competitive times, and I was good. I was very good. And he said, "If you come back tomorrow and you do a mile in this time, which was a competitive county level time, I'll let you train in the pool 3 days a week." So I thought, well, it's better than nothing. So I went, and I did the swim, and I just got within the time. Bang, I hit it. So he said, right, okay, we'll have it, because they wanted people to join their teams, their swimming teams, their this. But one team that they couldn't get anyone to join was the wrestling team. So the agreement was I had to swim three days a week in my lunch break, and 2 days a week I had to parade at the dojo and join the wrestling team. It was like full-on Olympic wrestling.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't my thing. And it was quite tough. Anyway, no one joined. The only people in there were the instructors, the PT instructors. So I went along and I joined it, and I was actually surprised because I was quite good at it.
Yeah.
So I made the police wrestling team, and that sort of kept me going. I in the end I looked forward to it. It was my thing, and that made it tolerable. So I sort of just scraped through the training. I had no interest in being at that place, but it had changed me as a person. It moulded me, and it's weird. It's so weird. I had become part of that thin blue line, and then I got sent out onto the street, and they sent me to a really tough area in southeast London, and it was just chaos. I just wasn't used to it. I never really mixed with people that have been in trouble with the police. It was just a new thing, and then I get sent to this area where you turn up at a call and you just get attacked. So what the coppers were doing, it was like, you've got to get in first, otherwise you're going to get hurt. So it was a case of turning up, and it was who could throw the first punch. It's basically how it was. No matter what it was, you got out. If they didn't comply within seconds, they got knocked out. And it's really weird how you start. It doesn't take long before you start being part of that. There's some really interesting social studies that have been done by like the Stanford Institute to do with torture, and people going about like the Holocaust. It will never happen again. Well, that's a load of crap. It will happen again because it's always happened again. And same with whistleblowing. You know, we'll never have cover-ups like this. Yes, you will, because people are compliant. And they found that only one person in a group of 15, if they've got a unifying aspect to them. So a uniform could be anything from a full police uniform to even 15 people wearing the same sunglasses. It's weird what it does, but only 1 in 15 will stand up and speak out. And they found
numbers sound about accurate.
Yeah, and they found also that people will easily. Sorry, I just got to press a button here. People will easily get indoctrinated. So the Stanford Institute took 12 people, split them 6 and 6. I think that's the ratio, anyways, something like that. And they put 6 as prisoners and 6 as guards. And they were friends. They knew each other. And the briefing was you're not to mistreat each other. And it was a matter of days before the guards actually started mistreating and then torturing. It didn't take long at all. So when you get people coming up with this crap, this will never happen again, and it's rubbish. It will always happen because that is human nature. And I started seeing it very early on, and it's worrying, really. But the police is interesting back then anyway, because they house you. Well, they did. They don't anymore. They housed us, and they give us such a terrible shift pattern that you can only really socialise with your own people on your own shift pattern. Your civilian friends just filter away very quickly. The job is so exciting and such an adrenaline buzz that you could never go back to normality. You just can't do it because it was addictive, and you changed as a person. You become aggressive, you become intolerant. Um, and the other thing they do is they install a heavy drinking culture, which it harms and helps at the same time. So it harms you in as much as you end up with a chemical addiction to alcohol, but it helps you because it's fantastic at dealing with trauma on the short term. It's just amazing what it does. Alcohol just, boom, trauma gone. Especially when
bonds the cops together a lot as well. I'd say, you go out and get pissed with your colleagues. You bond a bit closer, like.
Yeah, and your civilian friends will be like, "Oh, I've got to go home, got work tomorrow." The police was different. You go there, you drink until you vomit, and you could be on an early shift the next day. If you was to come home early, no one would talk to you. So it was brutally tough.
Yeah.
And then you get isolated and you end up living in police accommodation. So you're just surrounded by your own people. Yeah. And you become like an island in society. And you even work in fortified buildings. So you just don't, I don't know, it's weird. You just get isolated so quickly. And you get hooked on it. Now, when I joined, it was, a lot of the coppers had come from what they call the glory days, the 60s and the 70s, when they could do what they wanted. You know, these were post-war people that were tough, that were no nonsense. Police corruption never got investigated because no one was bothered about it. It was endemic. Violence towards prisoners was just commonplace. Perjury was a given. You know, any copper who says, "I've never ever lied in court," is a liar themselves. It's absolute rubbish. I think the only person who says they've never lied in court is me, because when I've written my book, I've had to say I've never lied in court. I've never lied in court, but make of that whatever you want. And I just, the people who trained me, they were late in service, and you know, one guy in particular, he was just a crazy guy, and I was working in a crazy part of London, and I just become this lunatic really, very quickly. I was very into my fitness, so I kept my fitness up. You needed it because you know you were fighting all the time. The wrestling helped, but I ended up in a lot of trouble, and I didn't realise that it's entrenched, it's saturated with rules and regulations. And the police is good until it goes wrong. When it goes wrong, you're on your own. It's a bit like the mafia. When they go to prison, they're on their own, and the police is like that. When you're in trouble, you are on your own, and they will throw the book at you, everything. And you don't realise that everything you really do in your life, your personal life, your work life, is governed by a discipline regulation. So I ended up in an absolute world of drama, really. I was looking at being kicked out for some of the things I'd done. It was stupidity more than it was corruption. Actually, there was no corruption in it. I was mishandled, that's all. I was just trained by the wrong people, and I enjoyed myself so much. So I've written a book called Ironic, which hopefully will be out soon. We're suffering some legal arguments at the moment, but I write about it in there, the things I got caught up in, and they're comical more than anything else. So I end up getting sent for a discipline panel, and what my sergeant, my reporting sergeant, hated me, absolutely hated me, and he was a bully, and he would talk to me like you'd go to prison if you spoke to members of staff like he spoke to me. But that's just how it was. It's just how they dealt with it. But I had a stepdad, and he was so brutal that no matter what they did to me, it made me laugh. There was sort of like a sadistic element to it. So the more I got treated like shite, the more I found it funny.
Yeah.
What could they do to me? You know, I'm not saying I was abused by my stepdad, because I wasn't, but the guy was he was a tough man, hard man, and he was just a very brutal guy. And that's what I sort of survived under. And so, and also the bullying. the in-house bullying is like, it's just a given. You're just going to get bullied, right?
Yeah.
Now, you either deal with it and just treat it for what it is. It's just rubbish. But if you take it to heart, you're in a world of trouble. And a guy that was on the probationary period with me, he took it to heart and he tried to commit suicide. He lost about 3 stone in weight through nerves, and he had a nervous breakdown because he just couldn't deal in a proper way with the bullying. Now, whatever they did to me, I just laughed at it. It was just stupid.
Yeah.
You just got belittled all the time. You weren't allowed to sit with these people in your refreshment break period. If you got a dinner from the canteen and you put it down the table, if you went up to get a knife and fork, someone would throw it out the window. They'd take your locker into the car park and turn it upside down and put hose in it and things like that. I found it funny, right? It still makes me laugh now. One guy, they put dead fox in his locker. Another one, they put a pigeon in there, and it was in there for days. And I think it's funny. It just made me laugh. But I just got in, and honestly, the things I got caught up for, it was just. I was on about three charges of so-called corruption, as it were. But one was taking of gratuities. So that could be that you're receiving high-end expensive gifts from people in return for corrupt favours. But mine wasn't like that. I was just so nice to people. One guy worked at the infamous Billingsgate Fish Market in London, and out of gratitude, he used to come in with boxes of fish every day, cod and stuff like that, and leave them at the desk for me. And I used to just share it out. I didn't know what to do with it, so one guy used to have fresh fish every day for so long, and so I was on the charge for that, and all other sort of weird misdemeanours. Yeah. And I'd got with a girl whose dad was in prison for murder, and that wasn't allowed. Anyway, so I went before a discipline panel when my sergeant, he's just such a zealot and just not a nice man. He was just a horrible bully, really. And he's gleefully reading out all the evidence against me. And as he's doing it, one of the adjudicating officers, the senior officers, he had his hand like that. And you could just see his head going, and there was tears coming out of his eyes. He was just laughing his head off. And I knew that there was no way they were going to run me. And this guy was just laughing. And when the sergeant got kicked out of the panel room, he said, "Listen," he said, "this isn't the 70s. He said, it reminds me, you remind me of someone from then." He said, "You can't behave like that anymore, son. This is the 90s now. And, I'd love to promote you. I'd love to keep you, but, you're just going to get more and more trouble. So we're going to move you." So they decided to move me to an even rougher area, if there was one, send me to an area called Peckham. And so they decided I'd just carry on the same as I did there. So I got sent to the West End of London. So I got sent up to the West End. And that was just brilliant. It was, everyone was young in service. Well, everyone except the CID was young in service. The PCs were all in their 20s. And it was just a party. The whole time was a party. The people were nice. You wasn't going to get shot or stabbed. It took me a long time to calm down because where I was before, we just didn't take any nonsense off anyone. And all of a sudden, there's people here asking me questions like, where is, the Bank of England? Where's the Tower of London? Where is Buckingham Palace? And, before I used to tell them to F off and pushing them or something like that. And the guy said, "John, you can't, Yeah. The first time I arrested someone up there, the bloke was just splattered on the floor within seconds, and a sergeant come and went, "John, look, listen, this ain't South London. You can't do that here. They're nice people.
Yeah.
You're going to do it to the wrong person." So I slowly calmed down, and then I started to treat it for what it was. I enjoyed myself. It was great time, and I earned myself a place in the CID. And the strange thing is, this police station I've been sent to was newly built. It replaced these old Victorian ones. So anyway, what I didn't realise was that the corruption command had built this station, been built, that everywhere was monitored. So you had a swipe card, you had to swipe in, and every swipe thing was sent to the corruption police, and they were monitoring the movement of every policeman. Outside the police station, there was some flats, and they had an observation, and they were observing, filming everyone who was coming and going. And the reason was that the commissioner of police had put all the corrupt detectives in this nick. You know, they were told they were just being transferred. A lot of them were under investigation for serious crimes, and they were all slung together in this one place. So it was the most corrupt CID, criminal investigation department, ever. It was unbelievable. And there were guys there that were involved in drug trafficking, and the violence of these guys was unbelievable, because they come from serious crime units dealing with serious criminals, and most of them joined in the 70s, and they've been on these units like the Sweeney, the Flying Squad, where they could do what they wanted, and they thought, oh well, this quiet Nick will carry on doing it. But they didn't realise that everything was monitored. The phones were all tapped, and I had myself a place in the CID, and I was amongst these guys, and it was just chaos. But they didn't want to investigate anything, because they didn't want to put their name to anything, because they didn't know if they'd have a job the next day. One day 5 of them got arrested. So there's always a group of suits coming in and sealing off someone's desk or their locker, and then the detective was gone. You never see him again. And it was happening on a regular basis. So these guys were like, well, I haven't put my name to anything. Yeah. So I was a trainee detective. So they were screening all the crimes into me and another guy. So usually 10 crimes is a manageable amount. We had 190 crimes each. Just this incredible amount of crimes. And we ended up investigating a murder, which should have been taken onto a murder unit. Everything. It was just, the whole place was in meltdown.
Yeah.
And, bye mate. And then from there, but I had a lot going on in my private life. I had the girl I was with, I got pregnant, we had a kid, then we had another kid. But what I didn't realise was that she had 2 kids as well. They were living with us from previous relationships. But she had a drug problem, and she ended up leaving me, just running off and leaving me all the children with me whilst I was, a young detective. So
I was going to touch on that. So with everything that we're going to touch on, everything you went through, just for people to know, you were also a man in your 30s raising 4 kids by yourself.
In my 20s. In
your 20s. So. I mean, life must have been exhausting for you. Trying to even keep a career going and raising 4 kids. It must have been absolutely exhausting.
Well, financially as well, it was... Luckily, I've got a nice family, and they helped as much as they could. My mum was helping, but it was too much for her. She had a heart attack and nearly died. So the whole thing was in free fall. It was funny enough, when my book was proofread, I sent a copy to my mum, and she struggled to read it. She said it's just too painful to read, because it brings back, the trauma, how hard it is. I have no pictures of my children. I have got them, but I don't have them on display at home. People always got pictures of their kids everywhere. I don't have it. And someone said, why not? I said, because it was too traumatic for me. It was too hard for me. And my children grew up without a mother. And the youngest boy was 9 months old. And it affected them as well. It really made life in their adult years tough for them.
Every family needs 2 parents. Like that's...
Oh, of course.
Two parents, one complements the other. Obviously, the mother not being there is much, much rarer. It's more common that the father isn't on the scene, but even to anyone listening to this, any young lads or anything listening in, you have a girl knocked up or anything like that, you don't understand. You mightn't understand yourself, but the role you will play in that child's life is so important. Even if you don't get on with the ma, even if you think, oh, that was a one-night stand, she's a bit crazy, don't leave the child with crazy. Be involved in its life. Nothing but good will come out of it. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, and I'm going to endorse that. I'm going to echo what you said there, Luke, because as a father of a single parent of 4 kids, now 2 of them have been abandoned by not just their fathers, but their mother as well. So it was tough for them. But I loved being a father. I just loved it. I loved my time with my kids. It was brilliant. And we become a gang. I go on holiday even now. My oldest boy's he's coming up to nearly 40 now. You know, he's a grown man, he's a mature guy. And we've just come back. We've been away to the Canary Islands together. We're all best mates. I love them. So anyone who flippantly thinks that it's not for them and they can walk away, you're outrageous. There is nothing more precious in life than children. And if you sacrifice that for material things, you're thick, you're an idiot. And let me tell you something else. You're dangerous to the well-being of your child. And I'm going to explain that. I'll come to this about my role as a child abuse investigator. But most of the cases of child rape are dealt with were by a stepfather. So when you leave them, and again, this baby mother terminology is just wicked. It's immature. It's wicked. It lacks responsibility. It definitely lacks maturity. And it's crap. And I know it's endemic in some cultures, especially Caribbean cultures, but they weren't brought up like that. You know, the first generation, the Windrush generation, they had mothers and fathers. So where this single parenting strive from, it's just appalling. But a lion must protect his cubs, and a lioness never leaves her cubs. Yeah. So when a child is sexually abused in the home, it is 80% of all abuse by children is done in the home. And the chances of your child being sexually abused in the home goes up 30 times, which is an extraordinary, massive number, with the presence of a step-parent, usually a stepfather. So these guys that think they can walk away and it's all going to be all right, you're thick, you're an idiot, you've got no respect for your children, and you are putting them significantly at risk of being sexually assaulted. So don't stand there and think you're a dutiful father by walking out, because you're not. You are failing your children, and when a child is sexually abused, that abuse goes on for 3 generations. So it's not that they lick their wounds and get over it. No, they don't. And you're massively allowing that kid to potentially kill themselves through suicide, through depression, and maybe drug addiction, which are byproducts on a huge scale of sexual abuse. So it's right that what you said, and I'm backing you up all the way, because you're bang on the money with that one. Yeah. But why would you leave your kids anyway? They need you. They love you, you know. And
you'll never do anything as noble in your life.
Never.
Or as rewarding. Just genuine. It just feels right to raise your children, to have a family. It's actual truth. It's one of the rare things that's actual truth. It just feels right.
And when you watch a child born, it's just the most magnificent thing. You know, I know people that don't want children, but they'll have a house rabbit, or I don't know, some other nonsense pet. I mean, pets are good, but come on now, we need 2.4 children to maintain a society. At the moment, it's 0.6, because people just don't want to do it. But also, there are financial and socio-economic issues going on here, and the government have made it too difficult for anyone to own a house. So I know that but anyway, that aside. So,
but that's playing by their rules. We can change the way we live a little bit, but anyway, that's and like your own situation. I wanted to talk a bit about your stepdad. You touched on him there, because he actually, it seems, played a pivotal role in making you the man you became, which I find interesting, because again, you're one of the lucky ones, because although he seemed like a beast, an absolute beast of a man, loved to fight, loved to drink, but he seems to have really loved you and to really took time to try and make you a man. And I mean, that's special. Some of us can be lucky a good stepdad comes into their life, but he was no angel either.
Well, let me set the scene for them. So my real father died of a heart attack when I was in my young teens, and then my stepdad sort of came on the scene. Now, I won't go on too much about whatever, because he's still got a family that's still alive. He is dead now, but anyway, this guy, I mean, my father was from Anglo-Sicilian background, like a typical Italian, short-legged, very, very immaculately dressed, very dark-skinned, and just a nice guy, really. Now, my stepdad was pushing 6'7". His actual biological son is 2 meters tall. He was a blacksmith farrier by trade, although he was a trained bricklayer. He did carpentry, he could weld, he could do anything with his hands. He had a small farm. He had an unbelievable skill for fighting, and he actually became a bare knuckle champion when it was mainly in the gypsy scene. He would fight. He was a highly intelligent guy. He was just massive. His hands were huge, but he had a horrendous appetite for beer. But he had a rule where he would never drink during the week. And the pub got so fed up of pouring pints, they got him a stein, so the great big liter thing, and it'd be gone in. When he got in the pub, that'd be it. You'd never get him out. And he was a man of extreme violence, and I mean extreme violence. One guy described him as incredibly dangerous. He went on to fight a well-known ex-professional gypsy heavyweight fighter, and he actually beat him in a bare knuckle fight, and he paid for his house with the money from that. But he turned up in my life when I was young. I just got a car. I didn't know anything about a car, what to do, and it broke down. So he said, "Well, what are you worried about?" I went, "I don't know what to do. I can't get to work. I can't." He went, "Don't worry about it." And what he did then, he took the engine out, stripped it down, and got me to put it back together again and showed me how it all works. We rebuilt the engine, cleaned all the valves up and everything else, put it in there, and it worked. And he went, "Well, you need to go to college." So I started going to night school and learning car mechanics. He said, "If you've got a car, learn about it." And then it went rotten. It failed the MOT, the Ministry of Transport test, because it was rusty. Back then, cars weren't like they are now. Back then, they were rotten. And he taught me to weld. He showed me how to weld. He got me keeping bees. And I've become really good at keeping bees. I just really enjoyed it. He made me go and rent allotments. So I had 10 allotments. I was a 17, 18-year-old kid. Everyone was out partying, taking ecstasy. I was digging allotments and stuff like that. And he taught me all these things. But on top of that, he was so funny. We would just laugh and laugh and laugh. But he would get me into trouble. So we would go to the pub and, you never know. I didn't drink. About 2 pints was enough for me. And then this bloke would be, "What's the matter with you? Drink." But he used to encourage me to train. So he used to make sure I went swimming. To get me swimming up good, it made me go running. So he regimented me, unbelievable. I was never allowed to go to nightclubs. He wouldn't let me go there. "No, you're not going there. The den of iniquity. Don't do that. You stick with me. You'll be all right." I was up in the morning, 6 o'clock, going running, even if I've been drinking all night with him. But he taught me so many skills. It just absolutely incredible. Now, he had a problem with his hips. He'd worked his body into decimation, really. He'd worked so hard that he'd eroded his hip socket joint, had eroded away his hip and poked through, and he was in pain. And there was a fella. He was a faith healer, but he was a champion boxer, a former middleweight boxer. I'm going to name him because you can Google this guy. Stephen Angel, his name was. He was due to fight Roberto Duran. He beat Dave Boy Green. He top-notch guy. These are big boxing names back in the 70s and 80s. But he got paralysed through a bit of glass in an accident. Had gone through his back and his leg. And he became a faith healer, and he found God and used to go around healing people. I think he was sort of half gypsy, this fella. And he wanted to see my stepdad and say, "Look, I can help him, I can do some healing on him." So I took him round there, and he did it on him, and he said, "Look, I'll tell you now," because the hospital wouldn't give me stepdad a new hip, was in so much pain, which made him drink more, made him more angry. And he went, he'll get his hip, they'll give him his hip, and I can take the pain away through his healing. And whoever has seen that film, The Green Mile, whoever's written that film, they don't realise, well, they do know, they're bang on. Apart from the bees coming out of the guy's mouth, this Steve Angel was the same as that John Coffey without the bee thing. It was almost bang on, almost identical. I nearly fell when I watched it. I said, "My mum, you've got to watch this Green Mile. This guy's Stephen Angel. This is exactly how he used to do his healing." But also he had an insight into people. And after he did the healing on his hip, he wanted to see me, and he said, "Interesting guy, your stepdad, isn't he?" And I went, "Yeah." And he went, and I said, "He's brilliant, isn't he?" He went, "He's evil, John." He said, "He's evil," and he said, "He's killed people." And I went, "No, he ain't. No, he ain't." He went, "He's killed people, John." And unfortunately, my stepdad did die, and he actually made a dying declaration to me. And he said to me that I've done some terrible things. And he admitted it to me, and then he died quickly after that. So he took that with him to the grave, you know. But it was just a man in pain. But his mum had abused him, you see. He'd been abused by his own mother. And when women abuse, the victims suffer a lot worse than when men abused. Women abuse, 1 in 10 are paedophiles are women, 1 in 10. But so 90% of paedophiles are made up by men. But when women abuse, it's done very spiteful. So they're very much into torturing people. They'll, you know, there's cases of women will put like tight elastic bands around little boys' genitals and things like that. Just hate things that are done out of hate. I mean, paedophilia is hate filled anyway, but there's a spite to it. Women tend to pick on younger victims than they do men. Yeah. And the victims tend to suffer a lot more. So 60% of the United Kingdom's most dangerous, violent, murderous offenders in prison have been abused by women. 60%. So it has a greater damage. Now, this guy was one of them. He had been abused by women, by his mum, and it had a massive effect on him. But I didn't understand the psychology back then of a survivor. I didn't understand victimology. But all I did know that he could flip like that, bang, and there'll be a trigger. I don't know what it might be, and this man would go, you know. But when I was with him, he was calm, and he said, "I just like being with you. You make me calm." So it was never anything weird, sexy about him like that. Him and me, we were just mates, and he just liked my company. And he said, "I feel calm. I don't want to hurt anyone." But years later, I was running a tree surgery business. One of the things he taught me was tree surgery as well. And he just get me climbing the trees and how to work chainsaws. And I really enjoyed it. And I got really good head for height. And I started a tree surgery business many years later. And I started up with a guy called Dave Brown. And Dave Brown was from Cornwall. And Dave Brown, a huge bloke, about 6'4", strong as an ox. But he'd served 19 years in prison for shooting a policeman. And he was a man full of anger and hate. But we started, he didn't like the police at all. And he was classed as a dangerous man. I think in the late 70s, he was classed as UK's most violent prisoner. But we teamed up together. It was a real unlikely combination. But it was like an algorithm of my life, really. But he used to say to me, "When I'm with you, I feel calm. I don't feel angry." And we had a really lovely business together for about 3 years. And we've become very, very good mates. But again, he was the same one. He'd been abused by his own father. His own father had done wicked things to him. And he spent near enough all of his teenage and adult years in prison. And it was just, what a waste. Yeah. Because a parent had abused them, you know. And this is what it produces. So I didn't recognise it. I just knew that I could understand violent people. And as long as I wasn't a threat, they weren't going to be a threat to me. But they had side effects, and part of that is destruction.
Yeah, I'm sure they enjoyed with you they didn't have, it was the time they didn't have to be on edge. They knew they
No,
could relax around you. You were just
yeah,
a benign guy, you know. You weren't going to flip out yourself. So I'm sure for
no.
them it was like, yeah, I can see that how they could just enjoy you know,
And
the
I started
placidness of your nature, you know.
having the same success in the police. So when I became a detective, I started working with the homeless.
Yeah,
So one guy said to me, when I went to the West End, we got a huge homeless population. We called them vagrants, and a
yeah,
lot of them were Glaswegian, loads of Glaswegian. All had problems with alcohol or crack cocaine use, but they were violent and schizophrenic,
yeah,
and they got treated really badly. They got a raw deal off the police. They really did. There's one occasion in the winter where a guy called up the police and said, "Look, there's a fella keeps sleeping in my doorway in my shop. What I'm doing?" They went, "Chuck a bucket of water over him. He'll soon move." So the bloke did, threw a bucket of water over him, and then about 4 hours later, we were called back there because the guy had frozen to death.
Jesus
He was in a drunken stupor, and it caused him hypothermia, and he was like a block of ice. They did get treated. And there was a thing called the home beat officer, and there would be the fellas that would just patrol around on one little beat, as it were. They're called beats back then, and they get to know everyone, And this guy that used to run this part of central London, I got on really well with him, and he said, you want to start using these boys because they know everything, they see everything.
yeah,
I said, okay. So look, I'll introduce you to them, and he started introducing me to the tramps, and I started running them as informants, and no one
yeah,
had bothered with them because they said they stink of piss, they're violent, but they were just men down on their luck, And there was a lot of Irish guys that come over for the building work and got into alcoholism and got unemployed and just ended up on the streets.
yeah,
And they saw everything. So I started working with them,
yeah,
and I've become highly successful. Especially in respect to drug dealing, but they're also giving me details of people coming and trying picking up little boys, runaway kids. They saw all that. So I made a great name for myself on that, but I had to leave it because the job had come up for the diving unit,
yeah,
which is why I joined the police in the first place. And it had actually come up. I was having so much fun as a detective. It was brilliant. But the diving team, the river police, you had to join to start with, and then you could specialise onto the diving unit after a couple of years, which is quite a straightforward transition.
yeah,
But the river police had such a good shift pattern. Everyone wanted this job. It was just like the best job in policing in the world. You just drive a little boat up and down the River Thames, and it was just brilliant. There's no crime as such. Well, they thought there weren't.
yeah,
And the shift pattern, you did 4 days, 12. No, well, you did 2 days of 12 hours, and then you did 2 nights of 12 hours. So that there was no complications with your shift pattern. And then you got 4 to 5 days off. And it was just brilliant. No one was ever sick. No one was ever late. And it was just great. But you couldn't earn any overtime. That's the only thing. There's no overtime. So I applied for it, and I was told I was one of 2,000 applicants for this joint. It was so heavily oversubscribed. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And I passed. I passed my interview. I got sent for a physical test, which was unbelievably tough. It was we had to swim quite a long distance in full winter uniform. And it was
wow,
hard,
yeah, it will be, yeah,
I didn't expect it to be that tough. I mean, I breezed it, but I thought if you weren't a swimmer, you'd struggle with this one.
yeah,
So I did that, and then I got posted to the oldest police station in the world, which is in the East End of London, Wapping Police Station. And I started this whole new world as a specialised, back to uniform initially, working on the boats, and then I had so much time with my kids, and life was quite good. And I partnered up with a guy. You worked with a partner. He was an ex Special Forces soldier. He was a phenomenal individual, and me and him, we just started going to work, as it were. it was there was the rest of the coppers didn't really want to do anything, and they made it quite clear that we've got an easy number here. We've done all that stuff on the street. We're here to retire, and we're not having anyone cause any trouble. But if you want to work hard, it's up to you. So me and this other lad, we just went to work, and we just started stopping people on the river, and there were a lot of new age travellers back then had started buying these old boats and living on them, and they were becoming a nuisance. But not so much on the Thames, but on the canals. And we covered the canals as well. So we started patrolling the canals, me and this other fella. And we just kept striking gold, finding quite a lot of drugs. And we started raiding the boats. And what we found was they were meeting in clusters. So there'd be a whole community. They weren't paying any revenue tax or anything. And they were becoming a menace. They were dumping sewage into the canal, and they're all like these eco warriors, but they were causing more pollution than they were fighting against. But we started finding that in amongst them, there were pedophiles. And these were people that were on the run. They didn't want to register as sex offenders. They'd come out of prison and had gone into boats, and they'd winkled their way into this new age traveller community, which was mainly made out of very naive middle class white people that were like, I don't know, real liberal minded ex-graduates, anti-establishment, green, like the liberals, the Green
Like
Party.
the hippies in America, kind of.
Yeah, those, and they hated the establishment. Yet they all come from massive families. One of them, we went and raided her home, her mum and dad's home, and the driveway was half a mile long. Yet she was living like in this. They annoy me. I don't like them. They got my nerves. But they were naive.
It's easy to go out and be rebellious when you know you can run back to that when the going gets
tough, of course. But there was little kids in their community, and they were letting these paedophiles babysit for their children. And we're like, wow! And they didn't even know it at the time. They just saw, and the qualifying factor for anyone to join their little close knit community was all you got to do is smoke a joint. So as long as someone turned up with a joint, they thought that was good enough. It reminded me of the film The Omen, when they took the baby into a church, and the moment it goes in a church, it can't go in because it's hallowed ground. And that's nonsense. Just as much as just because you smoke a joint makes you instantly a good person. It was weird. So we infiltrated them, and we hit them, and we hit them hard, really hard. And we started finding these paedophiles. And at the same time, the government had a problem with sex offenders going missing, and they didn't realise that the intelligence services were actually panicking because they didn't know where these people had gone to, so they were just going amiss, and so it come from high up in government. We need to find them. So I was approached by one of the intelligence officers that had been attached to the river police, and I didn't realise that this guy was just connected. It was my first insight into the intelligence services and how they work. And you'd be working alongside someone for years, and you'd have no idea that they were part of this other group. It was so strange. And this guy was one of them. He was heavily, heavily connected, and I just thought, wow. And he said, look, I need you. You've proved that you're worth your salt. I'll get you seconded out of here. You're still to work here from the river unit, but I need you tracking people down. We need paedophiles tracking down. And the government are behind him. Whatever you need, you're going to get. So I said, I don't know what to do. So my only request, I said, can I have a push bike? Can you give me a push bike? And they went, yeah, okay. They expected me to ask for all this equipment. And I said, no, push bike. And he said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to ride on the canals and I'll find them for you. And they went, well, we know there's two. Find us two more. Anyway, I couldn't believe my luck. It was just unbelievable. The more I looked, the more I found. Within 1 month, I found 90.
Jesus.
And I'll show you how dangerous these guys are. There was one fella, and he had set up doing respite care for autistic children, and he had this boat, and it was all nice and all that, and he would take these kids up and down the canal, giving them respite care. But he was a dangerous paedophile. When we eventually caught him, he had a special needs kids with him on the boat, and when we managed to get hold of his personal details and his logs and things he'd written down and hidden on his computer, he was actually planning on raping, killing, and dismembering one of these kids.
Wow.
That's how dangerous these people are.
Yeah.
So, with that information, the intelligence services were over the moon. And
Yeah. So that's probably the first child's life that you saved, straight up.
It just got bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. It's like being filtered off a main road down to another road, and then all of a sudden you get filtered down to a little track, and there was a whole community of people there you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
So I got then introduced to the paedophile unit for Scotland Yard, and then from there I got introduced to the National Criminal Intelligence Services, and their paedophile units, and it was unbelievable. So they were from every government department. So the post office had a paedophile unit that were infiltrating mail. The customs unit had one. The immigration service had one. So when you go through border control and immigration, they had special people there spotting the paedophiles, checking boarding passes. The travel industry had people in there that were monitoring people that were going to these source countries. And it was really strange because everyone thinks it's Thailand and Holland, and of course it is. But another source country is Portugal. And
Nice.
yeah, and I thought, well, why are the Portuguese lovely people? And it was a loophole in the law, because Portugal's quite liberal, because it's sort of like downgraded drugs, isn't it, and all sorts of things.
Yes.
It's done. And it did another thing where years ago through like UNICEF would do it and all that, you could sponsor a child abroad. So they'll say, look, Carlos lives in Ecuador and he eats, food that costs $1 a week. If you give us $1, he'll feed. So people were sponsoring these kids abroad so they could eat and everything else. Portugal had a different rule. Portugal said not only could you sponsor them, you could also make an application for respite care, and the government would allow you to bring the child over to Portugal to give them a respite holiday. So, of course, what were paedophiles doing? They're making their way to Portugal. Yeah. And then I'm going to plug my phone in because I don't want this to go off. So
do you know what, John? I'm going to turn on the light as well, so give me 1 second. That's a bit better.
Yeah. So we started finding people from Portugal, and it just started opening my eyes. So I then got told, right, it was getting bigger and bigger by the minute. So Scotland Yard said to me, what do you need? I went, well, look, I'm getting so much information, but I'm really bad at collating it. And I've got things written on backs of cigarette packets, old betting slips have got names on. And I said, can I have an admin assistant? And they went, yeah, don't worry. I didn't think that they'd agree to it. Anyway, the next day I got, not only did I get an admin assistant, I got an intelligence, civilian staff from the intelligence team was doing all my intelligence work. So it was just brilliant. It was amazing. So I would go out and do the field intelligence, and my admin team would do everything else. We were just flat out busy.
Yeah.
And then they said, look, we need you to go to some meetings, but you need to keep very tight-lipped about this. So I got sent off to this meeting. It's in an airfield, in the middle of nowhere. And I go in this like port cabin thing, and there's a whole group of people there with a screen on and lights. And I get introduced to them. And like I said, they were from all these different weird agencies. but they're all there to track paedophiles.
Yeah.
So I become a member of their group, and we would meet every month, and we would, over tea and biscuits, share information. This person's done this has done this has done. So I would impart so much information, and they'd say, right, they'd task me, can you go look this area, can you do this? So from London, my information then starts spreading, so I become a national, what they call a SPOC, single point of contact.
Yeah.
Within months, that national went on to the Commonwealth, and then it went global. And so I was tracking anyone to do with boats, paedophiles. I was getting stuff in from all over the world. Dangerous sex offenders that had gone off in boats to like the Channel Islands, to St Helena, the Falklands. We tracked a pedo down to the Falklands, because no one knew. Because when you come in by a boat, you bypass everything, and you can come in through a tidal river, go up a tributary river onto a canal, and no one knows who the F you are.
Yeah.
If you keep your mouth shut. And some of these boats are ocean-going boats. They're barges, but they've got like a cathedral-type hull, and they can actually handle open water. So you can do the transit to Holland, and then from Holland get on the canal network and go everywhere.
Yeah.
But as much as I was sharing information, they were sharing it with me. And there was one person in particular that was dealing with stuff coming in regarding celebrities and prominent politicians, and would openly share this stuff. Some would be on the record, some would be off the record, and it was shocking. And so I started hearing about singers, actors, comedians, people that they call them national treasures, and then they would, not only that, they were backing this information up.
Yeah.
Some had got convictions in other names.
Yeah.
And so these their stage names aren't their names, as we know. They're a stage name, and they've got horrific antecedents, for abusing kids and perversion. And it really took me a long time. I was so naive, and I can remember ringing my mum up, saying, "Mum, have you heard of this politician called so and so?" "Oh yeah, always on the telly." I went, "Look, I've been told that they're this, that, and the other, and they've done this and they've done that." And she was like, "No, that's rubbish." But it weren't. Years later, it would come out. So when the stuff started coming out, it was no news to me. I knew. And on top
I was
of
just
that,
going to say, I'm sure it was like that for you with the Epstein thing. The Epstein thing.
yeah,
That
was no news.
You're like, I've been dealing with this stuff for 30 years.
Yeah, there was no news at all. And you start realising how it works. But what I didn't realise was how it gets covered up. I didn't think the police would ever do that.
Yeah.
But the information we were getting, it was massive, right? But it started involving people in the political realm. And so one piece of information came on about a boat that was on the River Thames in a very wealthy, affluent, suburban area. And it was owned by someone that was linked to central government, the civil service, who was linked to politicians. And young boys were being taken from care homes onto this boat, and orgies with little boys was going on. And it was only really when that info came in, this shockwave went through the system. I was then collared by someone from one of these units at Scotland Yard and said, "John, they're going to come for you now. You can't talk about these things. If you dig too deep, it's a world of trouble." And I didn't know what he was on about. And he said, "Look, we investigate." And he told me of a major front bench politician in Margaret Thatcher's government that was so active in abusing young boys and procuring them. And he said, "We had him so many times, and each time it got covered up because who this guy is." And he went, "John, we worry for you, And then within days, I got pulled in by my bosses and just told it we're shutting it down. It was one of the most successful proactive operations in tracking down paedophiles that they'd ever had. It was, if not the, I don't know, I don't blame it on trumpet, but we had so many names. Or I had these cabinets that were locked. and there was so much information there. And then my key was took off me. I was no longer able to access my own information. Cabinets, these great cabinets. I knew enough profiled every single boat on the canal system. It was phenomenal. The Waterways Authority were really brilliant. Worked closely with them, and then the police did eventually tell me that you've dug too deep. You shouldn't have been looking into this, and it's come from high up. We don't know where. Sorry, John, but playtime's over, as it were. They offer me all sorts of jobs. I ended up on. Some people would love these jobs, but I ended up on a maritime counter-terrorism unit, and so I had to be retrained. It was all maritime intercepts, sometimes with the military. So I had to be trained in armed intercepts, boarding crafts at sea, abseiling, weird stuff, maritime special forces. Oh wow, weird courses. I'd go on these courses. They were quite tough, but they were like we board boats in the stormy North Sea, and some of these were container ships that were massive, and we'd have to jump off the back of them in all black uniform, black wetsuit, dry suits, things. And sometimes you'd be jumping like 100 foot into blackness into the water, and a black boat, special ops boat, would pick us up and take us off to the next one, and guys would be armed. We'd have specialist armed units. We'd have sniffer dogs, and it was all right, but it weren't what I joined the police for. Some people would love all that. Got trained in fast boating, and I just had no interest. I wanted to go back to my my pedo stuff,
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. So I turned around to the sergeant who was running the intelligence thing. I said, "Listen, come on, this is unfair,
Yeah.
I need to go back to this." So a job had come out for the Vice unit. It was another elite unit, but it was an investigative unit. It was all street work, dealing with everything to do with Vice. So it would be nightclubs, prostitution, gambling, the whole lot. Very infamous unit, racked with massive corruption throughout the 60s and the 70s. They made films about this unit. Heavily monitored because of the corruption.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the House of Lords mentioned about this unit that the corruption defies belief. It was fucking mad. So I got on this unit, and it was crazy. But I was back to like normal working. Well, I was back to more investigative hours, which meant a lot of late stuff.
Yeah.
And also they were a heavy drinking bunch. They were young. It was madness. It was manic, and we were just sent out into red light areas. And first job was to sort of just go and round up prostitutes. They're in a sorry state. The street ones are all crackheads. I felt sorry for them in the end. The brothels were a bit different. It was just greedy money making. And the girls are going about trafficking and all that, but a lot of the girls that were of age that were working in these places, they were doing it because it was tax-free money and they could make huge amounts. And a lot of them were married. They didn't even tell their husbands they were doing this. They were married. All they'd worry about, you're not going to take my name and tell my husband, are you? One woman had only been married a month, and she'd be doing this. And her husband, I said, "Well, what did your husband think?" She said, "I think he thinks I'm a hairdresser." And she was an Indian girl as well, and so you've got all of that respectability with the culture and that. And she was working in this seedy brothel, Oh, anyway, I didn't like them too much, but the girls on the street were that they were all right. So I did the same with them. I treated them like I treated the tramps. I got them working for me. And I said, I won't give you a hard time, but you've got to reciprocate this here. And they went, "What do you want to know?" I said, "Well, just tell me what you know." They'd all been in care. They'd all been sexually abused by dad, by stepdad. Got put into foster care, been raped by foster parents and everything. It was just sad existence for them. And they would tell you, Not all of them. Some were horrible, but there was a few good ones. And they say, look, there's kids out here. Just go get them. And when okay, well, tell me, where are they? And they'd say, look, when you lot go home, we were meant to work till 6 a.m. We spug off home just after midnight, 1 o'clock, to go home and claim loads of overtime, you know. So one day I thought, I'm staying. And I got some info of a little girl, and I waited. When all the others went home, I didn't. And you had to work. You had to work boy girl, so I had to have a girl partner with me. She was game up for it, and so we waited, put up surveillance on this trading estate. There was a little bush, little wooded area, and sure enough, 2 in the morning, a little girl turns up, all dressed up to work on the street, and we grabbed her and we threw her in the car, and
What age are we talking, John?
she was 13, but she made out she was 11. She looked 9 years old, to be honest. She was a tiny little girl. She was on crack, heroin. She had AIDS, and she was a little kid. And she was little blonde kid, and she dressed herself up, and she just looked like a little kid tarted up. And as we got her, we put her in the car, and it was like this traffic jam of cars were pulling up, and they're obviously pulling up for her to have it off of her. You know, there was like a queue, like a taxi rank, and she went, "They're all my punters," and I'm thinking, what? They're all her punters. There must have been about 8 cars all. So we
must have
took
felt like
her.
you slipped a mention to know, like, this is actual reality. Like, a lot of people, until I came in contact with your work, I never would have believed that this was really going on.
No. See, what you got to understand is this sort of criminality. I listened to some chief constable, and they're so out of touch. Why don't they ever contact me? I don't get it. And he was going, you know, if there's child prostitution, we'll deal with it. I thought, no, you won't, you idiot, because it doesn't present itself. This crime, like domestic violence, doesn't present itself. When it does, it's usually too late.
Yeah.
Right? You need proactivity for this. Right? And, you know, it's like a wife who's been abused at home. It's usually years later that someone says something on her behalf, you know, or the kids say something. And it's like with this, unless you know how to look for it, where to look for it, and what you're doing, you are never, ever going to find it. Never. Yeah. It will not present itself. This isn't like a Liam Neeson film with all little girls parading with some Kosovan gold-toothed gangster picking up the money. It don't work like that. Yeah. It's proactivity you need for this, and they weren't doing it. We put her into care. She was going to come out, but I was told, as soon as I put her in the car, I called up my boss, and I went, no, get rid of her. She's got scabies. She'll infect the car. She'll dirty the car. We'll get scabies from her. Throw her out. So they wanted me to throw her out, you know, to be raped by all these men queuing up. It would have been rape as well because of her age. Yeah. So that was a real turning point for me.
I can imagine, yeah.
And then from there, I got told one day, look, it seems you like little girls so much. Go and see this one. She's a menace. She keeps making allegations she's being pimped out. She's in a kids' home further into the middle of England, a good hour and a half drive from London. She's in a kids' home. She's making allegations she's been pimped out in London. Just go and tell her to shut up. So, I mean, okay. So I went up there with a colleague. We went to this kids' home, and she came out, this girl, and she was little. She was 14, but she'd been in that system for a couple of years, and she weren't the nicest of kids, but she was tiny. She was just a little girl. She was small. She was a bit of a dumpy little thing, but she said to me, look, she didn't like the police. She was very anti-police, and she said, look, I'm not a liar. I'm telling the truth. I'm being pimped out. So I said, well, how? So, you know, I'd go and see this little girl, and she said, look, I'm being pimped out. I'm being used as to work as a prostitute. And she said, it's not just me, there's other girls. Now, the thing is, the girl that I'm just going to move this, try and get it up here so I'll get you back to where I was. She gave a name of the person doing it that was pimping her out. And this person was actually known to our unit. And it was another woman prostitute. And there had been allegations about this older woman that was pimping out these young girls for quite a long time. So I go back to my bosses and say, look, this little one's not lying. I think she's telling the truth. I'm going to interview her. And they weren't too happy about that. But we managed to get the girl out of home. We brought her back to London and she was brilliant. She just free-flowed. And the thing is, kids, when you interview kids, they call it a free-flowing narrative. And what you got to do, once they start talking, you just go with it. Because they don't tend to sort of lie to that degree and for that period of time. Kids tend to look for, what's the word for it? Like acknowledgement from someone. So they'll look at you to say, am I saying the right thing? And, you can...
Validation, like...
Validation, that's the one. They try to, especially if they're not, they think they're saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So, and they get paranoid that they're not to scripts and stuff like that. And it soon falls. It usually falls at the first hurdle when a kid has been coerced into lying. They tend not to do it. Not saying that kids don't lie, but it's just for that period of time, to that amount of detail, and to be challenged on it as well during the interview process. It's pretty much a no that they're not lying. And this girl, she was just smack on. And she gave us the name of another girl. We went to see this other girl. She was tiny. This other one was, so she was a little mixed race girl, and she had these big eyes. They were like big eyes like that, and she just looked so young. And she said the same. She went, yeah, no, it's happening to me. I've been given crack cocaine, heroin, and taken to these places, and they were being put on the street and made to work on the street, which is highly dangerous thing. Little girls just going off with punters in cars. They were taken to cheap budget hotel rooms where men would be waiting for them, and they were taken in there. They were used for like lesbian shows with older women, so I mean, I could go into the ins and outs of what some of these kids were made to do, but it's just appalling, So right, and then they were taken to crack houses. So we hear a lot in the UK of these Muslim grooming gangs, and people think that they're the only ones doing it. They're not. We had Jamaican yardies, who everyone thinks they're cool and trendy, and it's trendy to be in with the yardies. These are big Jamaican guys, big heavy built guys, young men in their late teens, 20s, dangerous gunmen, were raping these kids, these young girls, passing them around. There was a lot of syphilis, there was a lot of HIV. Also, what people don't realise, condoms might stop the transference of a few things, but they don't stop contagious tuberculosis. So when you're that close, it's not going to stop that. One minute. You all right, mate? Yeah, take it up. You've got to take it up. Sorry, just to send a guy upstairs. And, these kids all had that. They had AIDS and everything. It was appalling. They've been traded for rocks of crack, taken to posh restaurants. And then one girl will give us another girl, And it went. The youngest one we had was a 9-year-old girl. And we had boys as well. But they were kids. There was white kids, there was African kids, there were black kids, we had Arab kids, Iranians, and you know, the youngest one we had was an Irish traveller, and the pimps were actually picking this girl up from the traveller's site. So no one's immune to this. So when you've got this community saying it wouldn't happen in my community, it's absolute rubbish. It is. No one is immune from paedophilia, and every community's got their failings, everyone. So I don't entertain that rubbish. It's just like, no. It's just crap. But
No, it's
also,
widespread. It's
of
global.
course, and the ones having sex with these kids, raping them, they were, like I said, Jamaicans were doing it on an organised level. There were Bangladeshi restaurant owners. There were Arabs, Kuwaitis, you know, Syrians, Lebanese that were doing it. There were women that were involved. There were white men. But the worst thing was that there was a police officer involved, right? And so one woman was. So we spent a lot of time on the street, trawling the streets, looking for these girls in London's West End and these red light areas. And one of the older prostitutes knew what we were doing, and she's a what they call a clipper. She would actually go and get punters and say that she'll arrange for a girl to meet and pay up front, and then just bugger off with their money. It's called clipping.
Yeah.
And she was an old crackhead. She'd been on the street herself, been a prostitute herself, and all that. And so she said, "Come see me." So I went and had a meeting with her, and she said, "You need to know something. One of your men's involved. You've got a copper involved." I went, "What are you on about?" She said, "John, there's a copper involved, and he's based at this police station. Was not too far away from where the epicentre of all this." And he said, "This man is taking kids to parties and to that he's doing it." And she was right. She was right. It later got corroborated by another senior detective, and there was a sergeant at a police station, a custody sergeant, that was involved in it. There was a judge at the local magistrate court involved in it. There was someone in the BBC involved in it, and so this needed to be brought to the attention of my bosses.
Yeah.
So I brought it to the attention of my bosses and said, "Look, this is what's going on," and I got attacked. I got told to shut my mouth. I got threatened. I got then told, if this ever gets out, you can't ever say anything. You'll lose your home, your job, and your children. You must shut your effing mouth. And just going on. And this came from the head of the unit. You've no idea what you're up against, who you're dealing with. And he said, "I'll plead with you. If you want to keep your kids, your job, and everything, you shut your mouth." And then they shut the unit down. They shut the investigation down. We'd accused over about 36 kids on this one inquiry, taken unlimited amount of statements. There was 18 months of real hard work gone into this, and the Crown prosecution got the case. They then scaled it down to two young kids. They were like two of the first ones came. The case did go to trial. I was removed from the unit, and then after the trial, shortly afterwards, both young girls were killed.
Were killed as in murdered or
Yeah.
drug over? Wow.
Suspicious death. That's what it was. Both overdose. And again,
This went on while you were still a cop, obviously, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I was detective, young in service in my policing career, my detective career, and then I got moved from that unit. I got sent to a child protection unit, and I was told you must never look into child prostitution again. There was no one looking at it in London at all, no one. And the police failed to look at it for another 7 years. But I went onto this child protection unit, and I said to one of the sergeants there, I said, "Is there a problem with kids being involved in prostitution?" He went, no, none at all. We have to monitor it, but the person monitoring it last 2 years, not one case. So I got hold of a list of children's homes, a list, and I rang up the kids' homes. There's 26 kids' homes, and I rang them up within 3 minutes. I was told of 3 kids. I rang up another home, told of a few more. Within 10 minutes, I had on a list of 10 kids, girls and boys, that were being pimped out. By the end of 3 days, I was on and off it for 3 days. I had 52 kids named that were working.
So
Not
this didn't
working.
even take much digging. It's just
Nothing.
no one was
And I
willing
was
to
told
even dig at all.
nothing. I was told, there wasn't any. So I held a meeting. So I visited the kids' homes. And what I did also, I took a friend along and said, right, well, we'll wait. One of the girls, wait till she. See, the kids' homes knew when the children were leaving the home. They knew exactly when.
Yeah.
There would be cars waiting up the road for them. Some of the care home workers had even written down the number plates of the cars. They even have phone numbers of some of the pimps because they'd come in and say, "Here's my number. I'll get Chloe or get Lucy or whatever when she's here. Ring this number." So they were giving them to the police and they did nothing. So I said, "Well, we know that this one guy picks this girl up every week on a Thursday. Well, why don't we just do him?" So he went, "Yeah, all right." So we waited. She left the home, and I just said to my mate, as soon as she walks into the street and she gets a phone call, jump on her, right? Just take her out, right? Get that phone off her. She's going to kick off, but don't matter. Just get that phone off her. I'll get the guy in the car. I'll drag him out, and I'll do the same to him. So it's exactly what happened. So as soon as I see him grab the girl, I grab the boy out the car, just smash him straight on the floor, get hold of his phone, and we got the transaction, the text message, "Are you ready?" and all that. All the messages, there was all the details. He was taking her to, he was pimping her out to these massage parlours, saunas and massage parlours that we see everywhere. And we had it. The girl, we didn't need her help because she weren't going to help us anyway because, she was making money out of it. She's away from home. She's doing whatever she wants. She thought this boy was, that was her boyfriend. He was from Kosovo. And he'd only been in the country a few months. And it was like 1920 or something like that. She was just in her early teens. And all of a sudden he'd set himself up as a pimp. He was the immigration services. He was subject to their inquiry. He was awaiting indefinite leave to remain and given a flat and given everything. And that's how he repaid it. So I had him nicked. And I used a good bit of legislation under the Children's Act in the UK that no one is allowed to take a kid out of the care system unless they're part of the family or they're authorised by a court, which he wasn't. So we got him back the rights, and we could then prove that it was a pre-arranged meeting and there was intent to pimp her out. And so I did that, got him charged with it, held a meeting with social services and other police agencies saying, look, this is what was going on. I've been doing these meetings for years. I knew what I was doing. And I said, look, here's the problem. This is how we solve it. The other inquiry was too protracted, too in-depth, too covert. The unit I was on weren't built up for that. So I found a cheap way of doing it, and it works. And we can save the kids at the same time. And at the meeting was a lead for safeguarding for children of a top UK kids charity, who basically verbally attacked me, harangued me, threatened me that I've got to stop doing it right away. I'm not to go near it. And a social worker did the same. A senior social worker for safeguarding in the London Borough of Haringey, this was, did exactly the same because they now had to put 52 care orders in for these kids. And they knew about them, but they once the kids went into these care homes, they didn't care for them. They're like, well, we don't hear from them anymore. We're not getting called around mum and dad's house and all that. But what the other thing is, you don't realise, is these girls were recruiting other girls in the care homes. So there might be a girl put in a care home because dad's died or mum's disabled or something, who's a nice, innocent girl. And the next thing, these little witches are recruiting them into prostitution and getting them on crack cocaine. And that's the reality of it. So it's not just, these men doing it. The girls are doing it to each other. And we don't hear about that. See, this is the reality of it. And after that, this lead for the charity reported me to a senior officer, saying I was treading on toes, that they were already looking at the problem, which they weren't. No one was looking at it. And I was moved. Within days, I was gone. Bang, moved. So this is what happened. Now, how this gets really sinister is that at the same time this was going on, and when I heard about the deaths of the two little girls, that they became like my buddies. You know, we worked closely together. They trusted me and I trusted them. And they relied on us for protection as well. They was in a dangerous place, and the police let them down. And you know, whatever happened to them, I in my heart believe that it was some sanctioned hit on them, but I'll never prove that. That the grandparents of one of the girls, Zoe, they still campaign to this day for the truth to come out about what happened to their daughter. They believe that was foul play, and they've never given up. They're probably dead now. They probably went to their grave not getting justice for their poor little granddaughter. Yeah. But Jimmy Savile had he'd been exposed. You know, he'd died and posthumously been outed as a paedophile, and of course they tried to cover it up but couldn't, and it became a national scandal. The more they tried to cover it up, which is what they did, the more it became a scandal. And people started speaking out on the scale no one would expect. And there were like these class action groups getting survivors of a certain care home would get together, and then another one would do it. Tens of thousands of people. And they were applying for records for social services where social workers knew that, you know, and everything else. And there was also a couple of police officers that came forward and said, look, you know, this is a cover-up, because I looked at, you know, this care home and kids were killed there. One in Jersey, there was ritual abuse going on there in Hope de la Garenne in Jersey. There was a chief constable, he started speaking out about our former Prime Minister, Ted Heath, that he was a child abuser and involved in satanic abuse. And both of these coppers, Lenny Harper and Mike Veal, they were silenced and bullied. There was another expose in the north of England regarding the Muslim stuff. And then I thought, well, I need to speak out as well. So I did. I made allegations of corruption, that the police had deliberately covered this up. And this is where you akin it to like Serpico, really. It was only when I did that that all of a sudden the case did get reported as corruption, but within days it was no further actioned, and then I got arrested. And it just got worse and worse. So I got arrested for one of the coppers said to me, be careful, they'll do you for data protection violations, because it's an easy to prove offence, and it will lose you your job. It's gross misconduct and it's criminal, and they've done it to all of us. We get done for it because you've just got to look at maybe one number plate registration that you can't equate to a crime that you've looked at, you know. But what I didn't realise is the police have gone through 15 years of my emails, 15 years, and they've done it in super quick time. And I got arrested for all sorts: conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, theft. I was arrested for theft of paper, sheets of A4 paper, threats to kill, threats for arson on Scotland Yard, because I said that if you come near my kids, I'll burn Scotland Yard down. So I got arrested for that. And it just went on and on and on. And I enjoyed this horrific campaign, but they said you'll lose your home, your job and your children. They stopped paying me. I went on to half pay. I then went on to no pay. So I went on to no pay. I was getting no income. They never suspended me. Never. They should have suspended me. They never did, because they knew that if I got suspended, I'd have money. So they kept me in poverty. Right. The banks tried to take my home off me. My bank account was shut down for no reason. So I couldn't access any money from my bank account. And then I was... it just kept getting arrested all the time. But the worst bit of this came when, in amongst all of this going on, I'm just in a world of panic. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know what's going to happen to my children. I'm just worried, you know, that I'm going to lose my home and everything. And one of my kids is involved in a terrible accident, and he ends up on life support in intensive care. And it goes on for a little while, and then one day I get the call no one wants to get. I get called to the hospital, I made my way to this hospital, this specialist unit where my son is, and he was handicapped after the accident. He was paralysed from the eyes down. He's a fit lad, sportsman, and I was told that he died. He'd been in he'd had a cardiac arrest just after I left to go home. He'd gone into cardiac arrest. His body went into sepsis and total organ failure. And they tried for 7.5 minutes. He was without oxygen for 10 minutes to resuscitate him. Couldn't. But they kept him on full life support because there was an algorithm still in his system. So legally, he was allowed 5 days life support before they turned it off. And it was whilst I was by his side in hospital that that the police, I came home on one occasion and the police arrested me for child abandonment. Said that while I was by my dying son's side, that I'd left my other boy at home alone, which I hadn't, and they tried to. So there was nothing. There was nothing they would
John,
stop at.
if my memory serves, and I don't mean to interrupt, the son they tried to do you for leaving on his own was 15, I believe.
He was 15 and my
was in the care of his 26-year-old brother.
26-year-old, yeah. But how this turns around is that on the third day of being with my son, I go into the chapel and just pray. It's only while they were just changing the tubes for the life support machine. He was on 100% life support because his lungs were ruined. His body, he was just gone. He was, they said that he's brain dead. His body's in total his spinal column's ruptured and by 96%. So nothing going to happen with him. The only thing was they'll keep the organs alive through the circulation thing, which I think may have been the intention, to be honest. So when I was in the chapel, I got angry with God, and I asked the question that all survivors ask: how and why? How can this happen when I'm being a good guy, helping? Why would you do this, God, when there's paedophiles and I get attacked? And as I'm doing it, I'm just going crazy, shouting at God, cursing God, and a rock in a chair in front of me and a Bible lands on my lap that was perched on the chair in front, and it lands on Psalm 23, and it's "The Lord is my shepherd." And I look at it thinking, what's all this? And it was like a magnetic draw to the text, and it says in there that I lay a table for you in the presence of thine enemies. It made me think, I am surrounded by my enemies, and then I realised God is telling me I put you there. But if God's done it, I'm in safe hands. And then it says, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for I am with you. I'm thinking, I am in the shadow of the valley of death. I'm there. I'm in it. My son's in it. He is the shepherd. And then I end up reading in the New Testament about the good shepherd leaving the 99 to go after the one. And I thought, well, my son is dead. The best I can do is pray that Jesus will be the shepherd and that he will find my son who's wandering in this valley of death and take him into eternity, And I said, Jesus, please, can you go after my son? He's done nothing wrong. He's a good kid. He's a beautiful boy. He's not hurt anyone. He's innocent. He's just a lovely boy. He's nice. Can you get him? He's a lost sheep. He shouldn't be in the other world, wherever it is. I don't know. He might be in purgatory. I don't know. Jesus, just get him and tell him you're there. And that's all I want. And I said, if you do that, I'll be your shepherd and I'll go after the lost kids. I'll promise you, I'll do it. And I left it at that. There was a few more things that went on, but I thought, time for me to go home now. Time for me. I'm going home empty-handed. He's dead. I'm going to kiss him goodbye, and I'm going to tell him he's got to go to Jesus. If he's like these near-death experiences say that he might be in the room attached to his body, I don't know. If he's there, he can hear me. I don't know. I was ignorant to all this. I don't know how it works. I've never died, so who knows? And I went back and I kissed him goodbye. Something no father should ever have to do. And the irony is, biologically, he's not my son. Where was his own real dad to kiss him goodbye? Do you know what I mean? It angers me. I've got,
He was
I've got a
standing
short.
over his real dad was standing over him, John.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
was
yeah,
being brought out there.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I like it. Yes, indeed. Yeah, yes, I like that one. Um, anyway, so I kissed him and I just said, "Listen, um, Jesus is waiting for you. He's going to collect you." And you go, "I love you. I love you. You've no idea. Just go to Jesus. He's waiting for you. He's told me he's the shepherd. He's coming for you." And I kissed him and I went to walk away. And as I did, my son's eyes opened. They opened. I was like, "Hey." I thought it was some reaction to something, I don't know. And then with that, he looked at me and he mouthed. He's got a pipe in his mouth, a ventilation pipe. He's got a tracheotomy pipe. He's got all these machines beeping away. And he just said, "I love you, Dad." He mouthed it. And I went, "Grab my hand." He grabbed my hand. I was told he was paralysed from the eyes down. Grab my, the other hand, do it with the other hand. He did that. I said, "Move your toes." And he moved his toes. So I knew he was intact.
Yeah.
And then I went home, and that's when I got arrested, when I went home for child abandonment. But the strange thing is, 2 weeks later, my son walked out of that hospital. He walked out of that hospital. He walked. He now is a
Real miracle.
manager. He's a manager for a construction firm now. It's just, and he teaches disabled kids snowboarding. I mean, you couldn't make it. It just, but
Yeah.
but what Jesus did, he didn't go and get him. He did go and get him, but he brought him back. He brought him back to me.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't keep him for himself. He brought him back to me. And, and that changed something, right? Because when you go to Jesus, I was a Catholic for many years. I'm now a born again Christian, right? I don't worship the Church of Rome. I worship the man that's Jesus Christ. And when you go to Jesus, what you do is you exchange something for something else. You exchange fear for faith.
Yeah.
So on the way home, the police were waiting for me. I didn't realise that, but I was no longer frightened of them. There was nothing they could do that I was scared of.
Yeah.
I didn't fear them anymore. I had faith in what Jesus had done, because he said in that passage, "I am with you. I am with you." I'm no longer in the valley of the shadow of death. My son's not in that anymore, and I knew that God put me there, and He's going to deliver me out of that.
Yeah.
And so I confronted the police officers. I told them, "No one's taking any kid, and over my dead body that will happen. You will both get injured severely if you try." And they backed down. They actually backed down. Within a matter of days, the police were no longer going to pursue any case against me. The Crown prosecution threw every single case out. They backdated the money that they hadn't paid me, in so much admitting that it was wrong in doing it. And then I got on with my life, and I started up this new life, and a process called Voice for the Voiceless, in which I started interviewing ex-criminals. Now, what had happened is I'd seen a few ex-criminals that had started speaking out why they went to crime, because they were in kids' homes, and I teamed up with them. One in particular was a man called Bill Maloney, and Pie and Mash Films. He's made some fantastic documentaries. A real hard man from the criminal classes of the toughest part of London, maybe Europe. This guy's made of granite. Me and him become the best mates, and we just went out interviewing people and filming them that are criminals. One of the Cray twins henchmen, Chris Lambriano, he got in touch with me and said, "Look, let's do something together." So we did the same. Started interviewing people, putting their testimonies out there, and this is how my whole life turned around. Hence, the book ironic, but and the subtext to the book is, a detective. The police tried to silence, yet the criminals gave him a voice, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And from that, I become like this self-proclaimed expert, and I started getting contacted by media agencies. But is this really going on? Is this not a myth? Is this not a conspiracy? And I went, well, of course not. And then the government inquiry occurred. and they heard more and more and more, and it just grew exponentially. It just rocketed. And then my testimony went out there, and just popularity went through the roof. I started campaigning, and I just got recognised. That's when Frank Serpico got in touch with me. I got detectives from America got in touch with me. I started then talking about ritualistic abuse because survivors of that were coming forward and telling me about that this is a reality.
Can you touch on that, John? Because when we were talking about child prostitution there, I remember thinking, people watching this now will think, okay, that is the absolute lowest of society. But there is another level to depravity that not a lot of us even know exists, but you're more than familiar with, which is satanic ritual abuse. And it tends to involve kids more so than not. So you do a lot of work with victims of that,
Yeah,
as well as victims of just child abuse and stuff like that. So I've purposely not harped on too much about the satanic ritual abuse because it is absolute disgusting behavior. I don't even like giving it airtime. The only thing I ever would is for the victims of it. So I just encourage anyone listening to this, just check out Jon Wedger on YouTube. He talks about everything. He has hours upon hours. I'd say you have a week long of footage up there where you go into all the various victims, cases. John has a foundation where he's actively helping these people get on with their lives, which is virtually impossible after what they've been through. So I would just advise anyone to go and check him out and see, and if he's willing to help or able to help, get involved and help out, because there's no middlemen between John and the victims. There's no CEO on 100,000 a year. Which, when you do charitable donations, this is usually what you're coming up against: is reams and reams of people on massive wages before you'll be lucky if 10 cent of your euro goes to these people. But John is actually out there with the victims. I've seen him give the victims giving testimonies. He's helping them every day. So I just thought I'd give a little plug in case we forgot, John.
yeah. Cheers for that. Now I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to give an example which is close to home over there in Southern and Northern Ireland. So when I would speak to survivors of mainly care home abuse, a lot were, suffered terrible trauma. There was a lot that were recovering or still in the grips of alcoholism. Heroin addiction was one of the main ones. Heroin is a drug of choice because it's a painkiller, and it will ease the pain for a lot of them. But 1 in 10 survivors were a little bit different. There clearly was mental instability, and a lot of them were being treated for a condition called DID, which is dissociated identity disorder, and it used to be termed multiple personalities. So I write about one in particular, one person, and again, I will never name these people. They fear for their lives constantly because this is a control that this has over them. And this one individual, she comes forward and she starts telling me about what she. Oops. Oh, let me just drop there. Right, hang on a second. Let me put that back there. I'll put that there. It's just I can take this off charge actually now because it's on charge. Anyway, we talk about Satan and stuff like that all the time. And she had these different personalities and they had names. And they had these strange childish names. And she would explain to me what they meant. She said, well, when you bring into an intergenerational satanic family, you talk the day you're born. So they'll do terrible things to you. One guy told me that when a member of his family was born, that the first thing they did was insert an object into the poor baby's anus to cause discomfort and pain. This girl would be drowned. She would be put in the bath and drowned, held under. It would be done on a regular basis. The mum wouldn't do it, but the mum would always be present, and the mum would always stop it. So the mum's complicit, highly complicit. Satanism, the women take quite a lead role in it. grew up.
Sorry, John, your sound has gone a bit there.
Okay now. Can
Go
you hear me
go ahead.
okay?
Yeah, now you're good. Yeah,
Well, I've got to keep there. Is that okay like that?
yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
Right. So um, to deal for her mind to deal with being drowned, she developed a character that actually likes being in the water. So that character would be called Drippy.
yeah,
So the childish names because it's a childish persona. The other thing that would happen is that she would be electrocuted on a regular basis. So they would just hit her with like wires from the plug socket. So to deal with that torture, she developed a character called Sparky. And whenever this torture come along, that character would snap in and could easily deal with that pain, but it was causing her mind to fracture.
yeah.
And then the sexual abuse would come in, so there'd be another character that would deal with that. She was made to have sex with animals, Jack Russell dogs, perform oral sex on cats. Just weird. But one of her alters, they call them alters, was a lesbian. One was left-handed, whereas she's right-handed, and she end up with this whole army of different personalities. But what they do is they use the children for sex, so they'll be making porno films with the children. There's big revenue in child pornography, huge revenue in it. So these kids will be used in child, there's more money if animals are involved, and the children will be used in ritual sacrifice. So when a ritual takes place, there's always a blood ritual. So you've got two forms of Satanism. You've got atheistic Satanism, where they don't believe in a deity. They believe in you are your one God. It's a very selfish look out on life. And the other one, theistic Satanism, is these people actually believe in Lucifer and Satan, and they worship, these gods. So but there's all these other choir of the demonic angelic realms. So they're calling them the nine choirs of hell or something. But when we look at other rituals, we look at like voodoo from West Africa. We look at Santeria. We can look at Kindoko from the Congo. The Romanians have got one. The Indonesians have got one. Japan's got one. Hinduism, that crops up so much. Hinduism, when I've spoken to people, that. But again, it's the choirs of hell are all the same. For example, there's a god called Leviathan, and it's the marine serpent, and this is when the floods came, they came to get rid of these demonic entities which are incarnate, and because they're not of God, they roam the earth in limbo, and what they need to do is inhabit a living being. There's a hatred for God, but they all have a different realm. Someone like Leviathan would be for it's a sexual god, it's a feminine god, and it will have a serpentine Jezebel sort of spirit to it, and it'll be like to get fame and fortune. So someone like Beyonce may well be involved in the Jezebel and the Leviathan. The West Africans call it the Mami water. Again, a marine spirit. Santeria, they call it the Oshons, and there's a marine spirit in the Oshons. So it's the same one. It's the same one. And there'll be another one for revenge. There'll be one for businesses to prosper. There's all sorts of things, but they want the blood. And the blood can come from an animal, but it hasn't got the power. That homeless people are sacrificed. Street prostitutes are used in it as sacrifice. But the main power comes from the innocence, and that comes from a child. And they procure children, babies, and there's many routes they can get them from. There'll be members of the coven will happily breed them for them for a huge financial and spiritual incentive. So it's all privilege and power. And sorry, my mind's honestly. As soon as I talk about this stuff, my mind sort of kicks out. Right.
Yeah, I don't blame you because it's just
But
horrendous.
but it's the children. They want to attack what is perfect of Christ.
Yeah.
Right. And there is nothing more perfect that is born in the image of Christ than a child, and an innocent born child is the nearest thing. The blood has immense power. I've got a police statement from a prostitute who was offered by a crack dealer £2,000 to get pregnant by a punter without condoms. So she'll get more money than that. And then when she got pregnant, there was a clinic in West London that she would present herself to and give birth, and the kid would be taken away. And she knew it was going. And so she did that a few times and would encourage other girls. Look, you can earn £2,000 here, crack money, just get pregnant, and then as soon as you give birth, then. And there's men that will pay money to have sex with a woman that's pregnant as well. So they're always going to get their cash, but they know the kid's going for a ritual, but they'll use the child of intergenerational Satanists to do the sacrifice. So, which adds to the conspiracy of silence and adds to the power of the ritual. So they'll get a young girl to kill the baby, and they usually do it by ceremonial dagger, slitting the throat and then removing the organs and slice it down the body and take the beating heart out. I've heard of a little girl being made to bite the heart while it's beating, and as they do it,
That was here in Ireland, John, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to mention about that, what happens over in Ireland, and then an orgy will take place. There will be the child will be raped in the orgy. Animals will be used in it. Blood is smeared everywhere. So anyone who says, "Oh, I went to a ritual and I didn't take part," it's rubbish. Everyone has to take part. They're sometimes done in ecclesiastical settings. They'll quote from the Bible. So if anyone wants sort of spiritual release and comfort in Christ when they're coming out of this, they'll never go to the Bible, they'll never go to church, because it's such ingrained trauma that's come from that. So they know what they're doing, but there are many people that have gone through it to speak out. I've spoken to about 20 people that have been through this, that have actually been through this and killed kids. I tell everyone, you must tell the police. You must tell the police. Well, one woman, I told her to tell the police, and she did, and the police thought she was mad. But there was a case in Ireland, and this is the nearest thing we get to official validation. And it was a case of a little kid. He was one of the Belfast Five. 5 boys went missing from Belfast from the late 60s to the mid 70s. And they all had links to the Protestant care home called Kincora, which is near Ormeau Park in Belfast. I think it's in South Belfast. And over a very short period of time, these young boys went missing, never to be seen again, except one. One of the 5, his body turned up in the River Lagan in a sack, and he'd been beheaded, decapitated, and a limb removed. They arrested his brother, saying it was a brotherly spat, because they'd had an argument over climbing trees and hitting each other with sticks. And they said that this little 9-year-old, 8-year-old boy's brother, who's in his teens, had, out of anger from being his brother hitting him with a stick, had cut his head off, cut his arm off, chucked him in a fast-flowing tidal river. I mean, it's absolute crap. And he actually admitted it. The brother, the boy's name was Brian McDermott. His brother actually admitted it, but then stated it was under duress. The RUC in Belfast had actually bullied him and beaten him into confession, and to this day claims he never did it. But the moment the boy's body was found, information went into the RUC that the kid died in witchcraft. So the British government did everything to dispel that, and they sent in a guy called Colin Wallace from the disinformation squad, part of the military intelligence unit, was sent out to try and put disinformation throughout Belfast and set up mock satanic ritual sites to say, it's rubbish. All this about witchcraft is heavy metal listeners that are just stupid kids. And he actually complied to a degree, then didn't. And he got stitched up with a murder he never committed and served, I think, something like 10 years in a British prison before. So they never disclosed publicly what had happened to Brian, what limb was missing. I get a call when I start speaking about this. I come up against extreme opposition from some major media organisations in the UK. For some reason, these papers always appear whenever anyone talks about ritual abuse. They're the first to say, "Actual rubbish. It's bunkum. This is poppycock. This is satanic panic." And Jon Wedger's one of the main players of it, and one of them's a satirical news magazine that everyone thinks is brilliant, but it ain't. So this woman said, "Look, I need to talk to you." She's over your side of the water. She's in Southern Ireland as opposed to Northern Ireland. But she said, my parents are intergenerational Satanists. They would exactly the same as what I've mentioned, abuser, torturer, raper, but she would be used for the ritual killings in the church of the babies. Again, it was done in all sorts of sites. One of them was a military site, a large military site, which is actually a megalithic burial site as part of the grounds. So these are favoured, these ancient druidic sites are favoured, and they tend to build churches on them to try and reclaim the land back. But they've got massive sort of demonic value because they are ancient sites of giants. We've got them in Ireland, we've got them in the mainland here. And you tend to find that the Ministry of Defence, the military, take this land in to stop anyone archaeologically digging these things up. A lot of churches that are on hills, Norman churches, are built on these old druidic ley lines and things like that, and there's a lot of power there. She recalls one specific event where she's kept prior to a ritual underground, starving, cold, in a lock-up underneath it. I don't know what it was. It was a commercial building. And throughout her stay, a boy is introduced and thrown in there with her. And she said he said his name was Brian. He would have been abducted. He was in his vest and his pants, and he'd wet himself and pooed himself because he's so scared, crying, just wanted to go home. And she was then dressed in a communion gown. She's only a little kid. And they'd gaffer taped a knife to her hand, and the little boy was brought out, and the whole ritual was there. And the master of ceremonies for the satanic coven comes out. She said he had a very weird type hooked dagger, and she said they just sliced the poor little boy's throat. He fell to the floor. They took the blood out and passed it round in a chalice and drank from it. And then she said the weirdest thing is they then cut off his left arm, and they held it. The guy held it above his head, and they all chanted in Latin or something. And then she was then made to sacrifice a baby that was there, and then there was a big orgy in which she was part of a lesbian show by older women, and she was only a tiny little kid from primary school age. And she said that this boy that went missing, that in Belfast, it's him, John, it's him. So I said, look, we've got to go to the police with it. What's the point of knowing this if we can't go to the police? The left arm is used because left is a devil's side, and in Italian it's sinister. Yeah. So that's what the word sinister comes. The left is always attacked in a ritualistic killing.
So it's symbolic. It's a
Yeah,
symbol.
very symbolic. The date, the time, it's all symbolic. And the kid, again, he was taken from Belfast, taken over into Donegal. This is where this happened. And then the body was taken back. So as far as anyone is concerned, nothing's happened. You know, this is
Yeah.
a Belfast issue and not a Southern Ireland issue.
Yeah.
Because jurisdictionally, it's totally different, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so I contacted the what's it called, PSNI. Now it's called the
Yeah.
Police Service of Northern Ireland. They've got a desk that deals with stuff, and I contacted a journalist for I think the Belfast Times, one of the big thing there. I said, look, I've got information, please talk to me. And he did. He spoke to me. I said, look, can you help me get this to the police? And he was good. He gave me a contact in the police. And I spoke with them, and they were good. They were good. And they said, look, what is your source like? I said, a very vulnerable woman. She's fighting for her life. Please don't betray her. So there was a few problems, but in the end it got smoothed over, and they wanted to take me over to do the introduction, but in the end they did it themselves. They've got this historic crime unit out there, and I said, look, before we go any further, if this woman's mad or deluded, tell me this: did Brian McDermott have his left arm missing? And she said, well, it was never made public, but yeah, it did. And she said, we're willing to move forward with you. And then they reopened it. The case has been reopened. They're now looking into it again.
Yes.
The people who've done it are probably well dead, but it shows it. You know, if that happens, it shows it's real. It goes on, and these people aren't mad. You know, they need validation for what they've gone, because it's hard to process. But imagine a kid, you have to go through your whole life knowing this, and
Yeah.
it's not just a murder. And when they think they're guilty as well, they think they're murderers for what they've done to children. They remember the screams. One girl told me that after she was made to stab, there was an altar with items wriggling under a cloth, and there was 5 babies, and she was made to stab each one. And she was only a little girl. They'd taped and tied. They tied like a let rope now, like a thin stiletto knife that had been sharpened, and they made her stab each one little girls in the vagina till they died. So you imagine the pain that these babies went through, and she was made to do it. And then after she'd done it, they poured the blood over her, and they got a baby lamb, a little baby sheep, and the thing was crying and bleating, and they cut it open, and they told her, this is the Lamb of God. This is the Lamb of God. So whenever she went into a church and she heard the Lamb of God, you know, which is part of the ceremony, the service in the Catholic Church, she would just scream. And, you know, but that's one part of it. You think of all the sexual debauchery. You know, they've been made to be sodomized by dogs and shocking things. I mean, I've had Satanists contact me, and I think, oh, here we go. It's just going to be threats and nastiness. But actually, one guy's head of a satanic coven was so complimentary, and he'd been a survivor himself. And I said, well, why are you going to Satan for your comfort? And he went, for revenge, John. When I go to the Christian, I got nowhere. The Christian legal system is Christian. Jesus never helped me. I was a frightened kid. I go to the devil, he helps me. And I curse those who hurt. And he said, I actually curse those who come against you, John. I said, well, don't do that in the name of the devil. I don't want that. My protection comes from my Saviour, Jesus Christ. But I realised he was a man in pain. I've had paedophiles contact me. Now, I'm not a supporter of what they do, but we need to understand who they are.
Yeah.
One guy said, "I'm not after your sympathy, but I want to help you catch them and understand what they do." And he said, "This is my mindset. This is why I abused. No excuses. I went to prison. I deserve all I get, and I lost my daughter because of it, and my family and everything. But this is what they did to me." And he, as a little boy, was put into the care home. He was raped every day by men that worked in the care home, homosexual pedophiles that worked there. They had a little cage there. He was 8 years old. They used to bend him over a chair or something, tie him up naked in the morning, and they'd go into a kennel and get out an Alsatian dog, and they'd all sit around masturbating and watching the dog rape him. And
How is a child that's been through that ever supposed to have a normal life? It's just not possible.
I know, and
It's not never
urinate
going
on
to happen.
him, and he ended up getting fisted. He was only a young boy, and they perforated his bowel. They fisted a little boy after. But why don't we hear about this on Panorama, on Channel 4, on the news? Why? Why does it take me to do it? And the grief I get for doing it, wow, That's why the national media for many years never went near me, because they see me as a wild conspiracy theorist. Satanism is not a conspiracy. This human sacrifice of children is not a conspiracy. You go to South Africa, they have a unit called SARS, right? The Ritual Abuse Unit, South Africa. Right? It's the most effective murder squad in the world, right? And you have to be a Christian, you have to be a murder squad detective. South African police run the Ritual Crimes Unit. A detective called Cobus Yonka runs it. And they're incredibly successful. The Italian police investigate occult crimes. The Saudi Arabian police have got one of the most well-funded occult crimes units. Saudi Arabia. NYPD have got a fantastic occult crimes unit, right? They've even made a film about it called Deliver Us from Evil.
Oh, I've seen it,
yeah. Ralph Sarchi, Malachi Martin. The priest is meant to be Malachi Martin. And Malachi Martin, he's from Cork. He become one of the lead exorcists for the Vatican. Malachi Martin. Listen to Art Bell's Coast to Coast when he interviews Malachi Martin. Fantastic interviews. Yeah, you mentioned Satanism in this country. You just get classed as a nutcase.
Yeah. A
So
lot of people won't even believe it's a real thing. But anyone who thinks John might be exaggerating or can't be that bad or whatever, just listen to some of the testimonies of the survivors. One look in their face and you know they're not lying. You kind of know if someone's talking shit. You don't know, maybe he's talking shit. Maybe you just talk to these people. They go right back into there like a child. I've never seen it before. A fully grown man, he starts talking about what happened to him and he sinks back in and becomes like a child again. That's not by accident. You can't pretend that.
They go into the fetal position, their mannerisms become childish, because that's their protection. Or they'll flip it and alter. The altar will flip. And you'll start talking to someone totally different. It goes on. It goes on. People sit there and they'll watch a Hammer House horror film. They'll listen to Anton LaVey and, what you think it's not real? I mean, look at, what's his name, Aleister Crowley, the influence he had on the music industry, on the entertainment industry, even on government policy. Yeah. He was influencing Winston Churchill. So this isn't nonsense. This is a real thing. And so much of the world believes in this. Do you know what? People can believe what they want. I don't care. If you think it's rubbish, good. Think it's rubbish. You're ignorant and you're wrong.
Ignorance is bliss, as they say.
Of course it is. Laugh at me, but you'll find out one day this is the eternal battle between good and evil. And this is what it is. The battle is for your soul. And there's the most powerful drug on the planet, not adrenochrome. It's a thing called innocence.
Yeah.
They want the innocence. The destruction of innocence is what this is all about. They need to destroy innocence. The adrenochrome is second to that. And Jimmy Savile, he was Satanist. You see what he was doing. He was a high wizard or whatever, and that's why you get government cover-ups and everything else. It's all
Yeah.
coming down to that.
Yeah.
That is what will never ever come out. That is the biggest secret, Satanism. You know,
Yeah.
and it says that the book of Ephesians, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, wickedness in high places, wickedness in high office.
Yeah.
And this is what this Epstein Island was a ritualistic thing. Fred and Rose West, ritualistic murders, so procuring children. People need it for privilege and power. I've heard of well-championed boxers that have gone screaming to Jesus, to Christianity, because they've got caught up in voodoo and done a sacrifice. Voodoo is real.
Yeah.
Voodoo it's the same thing. It's the country of Benin. A third of the population believe in voodoo and practice it. A third of them.
Yeah.
It's real. It's not a nonsense. It's everywhere. It's cultic and it's there. So
Yeah, when you start to learn what to look out for, you see it everywhere. Like music
yes,
industry, movies. You see it in. I don't know so much about the football because, you know, but I know you've mentioned about footballers being involved in this after they retire and stuff like that.
yeah,
So it's widespread. No country seems to be exempt from it. I mean, listening to survivors of this abuse, there is a case here in Ireland that everyone's familiar with because for whatever reason, it was put through all the newspapers, and that was the Dalkey House of Horrors.
right,
And from listening to survivors that you do be in touch with and stuff, the abuse that girl suffered was very, very reminiscent of what your victim suffered, which I believe was satanic. I believe the
yeah.
parents were probably involved in some Satanism of some sort.
Well, you've got the Irish Madeleine McCann, little Mary Doyle. Is it Mary Doyle? It went missing. I think that was Donegal as well. Never seen again. You know, these kids have high commodity value.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it Mary Boyle? Mary Boyle. Is it Mary Boyle? It's one of them. They call her the Irish Madeleine McCann.
Yeah, I'm not actually familiar with that, funnily enough.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
surprised by that.
It was quite a big case out there. It goes on all over the place,
Yeah.
and the cover-ups that go with it. When everyone starts speaking out about this, it's big problems. And the intelligence services have monitored, um, these crimes. They do. They
Yeah.
have, the intelligence services special branch. They monitor cults, so they're aware of certain groups of cults. And Satanism is a cult. They're aware of it,
Yeah.
and they even go to these spiritualist churches and monitor what they do and who's involved in that, so that they're more than aware of what goes on. Yeah,
It's like that old saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making people think he didn't exist. And I think this is like that.
of course it is.
Just because it's not pushed in our face doesn't mean it's not going on.
Look, we're all gonna die. Every one of us is gonna take our last breath. I want to go to grave knowing I did all I can to expose the evil of child abuse. But these people have been involved in this. I mean, God is the only one who can help you. God, who you worship, is a liar, a deceiver, and a thief. He speaks the language of lies. Repent for what you've done. You need to do it now. Your time's going to be short. You want to go to your grave thinking there's this sort of eternity in Hades for you and all that. Well, you're mistaken, mate. You're going to the pit, and that's for eternity. Believe it or not, it's okay. Don't believe it, but it's going to happen. People think they die and they go to sleep. Really? How does that even work? You
Yeah.
go to sleep for what? And then what? It doesn't make any sense, and it never has done, because it's rubbish.
Yeah.
There is an afterlife, and you want to go to the right place. Go to Christ. Go to Christ now and stop doing it. Stop doing it. There.
I've never heard anyone who's had a near-death experience say, no, you just goes to black."
Yeah.
No one ever says that.
No. 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 And there's many people, even there's Christian people, that have come back horrified of what they've seen, horrified, and they have to change their ways.
Yeah.
But just going to church, saying a few Hail Marys and everything else isn't the way. You've got to live the word, and it's a tough deal. But the devil's out to get you. If anyone wants to know, watch that film Nefarious. It's a fantastic film, absolutely unbelievable. nefarious, and the Vatican have endorsed it, saying it's the truest thing to demonic possession, and it's absolutely awesome.
I'll check that out.
But the big wigs in Hollywood didn't want it coming out. They tried to ban it and everything, but it's out there, and you'll get it, and it's well worth a watch. It's a real fantastic thing, and
I'll check it out. Yeah. Well, John, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been a real pleasure. This is one I really wanted to do, just because you're such an awesome guy. The work you're doing every day, the help you give people every day. I know myself, I'm a bit more familiar with you maybe than some of my listeners. Yeah. Although I know a few that are familiar with you, because when I told them you were coming on, they were so delighted. So I know there's going to be a few eager listeners.
Yeah, I've done some work over there. So I can't remember his surname, Jon. The ex-editor for the paper. What's his name? Sorry, John, I forgot your name. He's very well known over there. He used to be married to Sinead O'Connor for a while. Can't remember his name. His surname. Sorry, John, I've forgotten you. But I've done a conference with him over in Ireland, and that went really well. And I've done a lot in Belfast. There seems to be a big appetite for it in Belfast. And a strange place, Belfast. I get a strange vibe over there. It's very uncomfortable. I find it bizarre.
Being an Englishman, I don't blame you.
I find it really, really bizarre. But I had a brilliant time. I was over in the winter, and I went to a place called Blackrock on the coast, and they've got that iconic diving board set in the in the sea. Is it Galway? Is it in Galway?
Salt Hill.
Salt Hill, that's it, Salt Hill.
Yeah.
And I went there during a storm in beginning of December, and I went off that top board there.
Nice.
And what an experience! Wow, it was
I've done that myself a few times.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's
up here. I know you're big into your outdoor swimming, or at least you warned when I heard one of your talks. But in Ireland, there's a tradition. On Christmas Day and New Year's Day, all the old people go out into the sea for a swim. Like they do. In freezing cold, they're tough as old boots. They really are.
Well, when I went there, I thought I parked down the roads and was walking up thinking, no one's going to be going out in this. The weather was so rough. Yeah. I thought it's impossible. And as I got near, I started seeing people by the changing room there.
Yeah.
And they were all old. And the ones coming out of the water were singing, and they were having a cup of tea and a drink and a laugh. And because they were euphoric, because they've been in there. Yeah. And I went in there, and again, I had a 20-minute swim in there. Come out, I was absolutely on fire. It was just brilliant. It was just brilliant. I got my partner to go in there as well. We said, look, we've got to go in there. We've got to get in that water.
Yeah.
And it was great. And then afterwards, went and had a pint. I had a Guinness in the pub around the corner, and it was fantastic. And just seeing them boards, because I've seen them on the telly, I've seen them on the film The Guard. It's in there, and I just thought, I've got to go off that top board, and it's quite high as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So,
but it's awesome. It was. I could never
fantastic.
Pass that without jumping off at least once.
Yeah. So you're lucky. You've got a fantastic coastline in Ireland. It's gorgeous. Second to none. So I do like it, and I've always had. I've been well received over there, and I think as much as you can, you're trying to keep hold of your culture, and it'll be a shame if you lose that. It would be a massive shame, because that makes you so individual. But
we're not going to let that happen, I can assure you.
No, we've got to fight against it. We've got to fight at all levels. And we need the church to come on board with this as well, with the ritual abuse. The church needs to be very vocal, and they're not. And that's something that has to change, So we'll pray for it, and hopefully we'll get it.
Yeah, and keep spreading the word. This is the way. John, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Anyone who is interested in Jon or his work, check out the Jon Wedger Foundation. He does a lot of work right up until this day, I believe, with victims. Victims still come forward to you, John?
Yeah, get victims come forward. I do my best to help them where I can. I don't get caught up with the family court stuff because that would suck me dry.
Yeah,
But I have helped quite a few people. And the main thing is trying to speak out about suicide because unfortunately a byproduct of the abuse is suicide. And so many could succumb to suicide. It's awful.
it's a massive percentage. It is. I know that myself. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've written a book. It's going to be called Ironic. Hopefully, it'll be out soon. Like I said earlier, we've got a few legal problems because I've gone there and I've named names and I've made accusations at the British government for what they've done, and that could cause a few problems. But hopefully, I can prove it to a court standard. So hopefully, liably, I should be okay. I'm
Yeah.
just waiting for a lawyer to read through it, and then it should be on the market. And it's a nice, entertaining read. And I dedicate the last chapter to testimonies from survivors,
Brilliant.
what they went through, and it sort of puts it in context why I do what I do. I don't like people having sex with children. I think it's wrong. It's destructive, and you need to stop doing it. And those that do it, it was done to you. You know the pain, you know the misery. You've got to stop it. It has to stop now. Not only do you stop it, you need to speak up and tell the police what you've done, who you've done it to, and you need to inform on all the others around you that are doing it, no matter what, because otherwise it'll be too late for you. Again, you take your last breath with all of that guilt and shame of what you've done. I say to survivors, there is no shame in what you've done at all. You had no choice. You was a victim. Your life is precious, and suicide is not and never will be the answer. God loves you. Jesus loves you. It's not Jesus who did this. It was evil that did this. Anyone who sexually interferes with a kid, hurts a kid, is evil. And there's a clear warning that Jesus makes in the New Testament. Matthew, Mark and Luke, they all say the same. It is better that him who causes a young one to fall away from me, meaning abuse them and lose faith in Jesus, that they put a millstone around their neck and jump into the depths of the sea. That is the abhorrence that Jesus Christ has for those who abuse children, right? And I call out to active Satanists, people involved in ritual abuse and ritual sacrifice. It's a no-brainer. You've got to stop and repent and go to God and speak out. Make this a thing. Come forward and speak out. The only way we're going to conquer Satanism is for Satanists to repent and come to Jesus and speak out and tell the world what went on. That's the only way we'll do it. We won't infiltrate these gangs. We just pray that Satanists go to Jesus, and they will, but and speak out. It's no good being quiet about this. Your penance is you speak out and tell the world what you've done.
Yeah.
So God bless all victims and survivors. Thank you, Luke, for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, it was my pleasure, John. I'm so grateful for you for coming on, and I hope I can do something to help towards leading some people towards your foundation and helping victims of this horrific crime, which hasn't.
We've just got to share the work, and that's that,
Yeah.
and make it a thing. The national media are slow in the uptake. I'm not saying they haven't done it. A few have, but on the whole, they steer clear of it. Fear no evil.
Yeah.
Fear no evil.
Well, it
And
starts
that's
with
what
us because we are the many. They usually
Yes.
we have to put pressure on them to get fucking their finger out our arse.
Yeah. And if Satanists are a religion and want the same rights as any other religion, well, let the cameras into your service then. Have an open book policy and let open door policy as well. Let anyone come in and watch one of your services and ceremonies, and we'll soon find that you're talking rubbish. You're talking out your arse. They're liars, and the devil wants to destroy children. That's the goal. Destroy children. They can't destroy God. Can't destroy Jesus. So do the next best thing. Kill the children, and that's what they're doing. And they ain't gonna win. They've already lost. But we just hope there's no more victims.
100%. I couldn't agree with that more. On that note, John, I will let you go. Once again, an absolute pleasure meeting you. Best of luck in all your endeavours. And look, all the best to you and your family, John. I wish you all the best going forward.
I'm
As
going to go for a
always,
cup of tea now. All right.
get her into you. Get her into you, Cynthia.
See you later, big man. Cheers,
All the
Luke.
best, my man. See ya.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Bye bye.